Adama, it's a real pleasure to be able to speak to you. I'm talking to Adama Bah, who's in the Gambia. Many of you will know Adama. He's a giant in the responsible tourism movement. But what you may not know about Adama is that he began life working in hotels. And I wanted to ask Adama how he sees the relationship between the white tourists and the predominantly black staff in the hospitality sector in the Gambia, and what the issues are which arise from that. Adama, what's your view on this?
Well, I think the relationship in terms of, if it is in terms of race, is very covert, because the way you are trained in the hospitality industry is everything is put on the cultural difference rather than sometimes seeing the other aspect of it. So it's a bit covert, and the guest who is coming is not showing what his or her real behavior is sometimes. But here and there, of course, you will experience certain tendencies, and you will know that this is really a racist tendency. But the way you are trained is you have to give service to the guest, always smile to the guest is always right, and you interpret it as a cultural difference rather than sometimes it being a naked racist behavior. You can see this very clearly if you think, Harold, you know, the Gambia, there was a time when sweets were thrown to children, for example. No one will do that to your children back in Europe. So those type of behaviors, you see them, and you know that this is racist in nature. But sometimes it's taken lightly, but these are serious behaviors. And over the years, we have been criticizing this type of behavior. Fortunately, I've not seen anyone doing it nowadays in the Gambia, but you had such tendencies.
Adama, are there still residual problems of racism in the Gambia in the tourism experience, or is it something you think has been sufficiently well handled?
No, I don't think. I mean, because you cannot say it's institutionalized by the way, because I think there is more education nowadays. There is more exposure, and the social media and all that plays a great role in minimizing such behavior. But you can see through the behavior of certain individuals that sometimes it's more like a patronizing relationship, where I am going to these poor Africans and I am going to help these poor Africans. And the image that you have of Africa is, well, they're all poor. I have to sympathize them. I have to give them sweets. I have to give them this. And that, in its way, you can really interpret that as a racist behavior, because sometimes that something that you cannot do back home, why should you be doing it in another person's country?
Does this cause a lot of stress for the people who work in the hospitality sector in the Gambia?
Well, unfortunately, for many of these destinations where tourists go to, I mean, they came into tourism from a colonial experience. So there is nothing worse than the person that is being racially abused having the same connotation that this person is of a superior race than I am. And that is the worst thing that can happen. And actually there are examples of that where people feel people coming from those countries are coming from rich countries, and therefore we are of an inferior race. And coming from a colonial experience, you know, the whole thing about colonialism is treating the other race or treating the other country as your possession. and therefore all the others, you have an empire which owns you, literally, and you do as they say. Now, coming from that experience, I always say the worst type of oppression is cultural oppression. And Africa and a lot of countries where tourists go to today needed to go through a cultural revolution where people are awakened to know what they own, to know how they can develop what they own, rather than all the time seeing the West and seeing people coming from those countries as coming from a better race than us. That's the worst experience that can happen when the person accepts he or she is inferior from the other person.
Adam, I assume that many of the people who work in the hospitality sector are often surprised and disappointed by the poor behavior of the guests.
Oh yeah. But as I said, the way we are trained in the hospitality industry is actually to accept the behavior of the guest, and that in the first place is wrong. Yeah. I know, but that's the way you're being trained, is to always put on a smile. It doesn't matter if it is a plastic one or a real one, but always put up a smile. And this always relationship of being, it's more like a servitude relationship. And that's the way you are being oriented. But I mean, that's not only the Gambia, but the whole of the hospitality industry. That's how people are trained. And it's more evident where the person you're serving is white and you're black. Yes. That's more evident there. But generally, this is the way people are trained.
Adama, one of the things which I have learned mainly through my relationship with you to appreciate about the Gambia is the multi-ethnicity of the Gambia, the diversity of the ethnic groups who live together, Christian and Muslim and various African ethnic groups as well, in a remarkable degree of harmony. And one of the disappointing things is, in a way, the racism gets in the way of people seeing that at all, don't they? They just see Africans. They don't see that there are many different cultural and ethnic groups amongst the people they're meeting in the Gambia.
Yeah, I mean, we must also avoid to romanticize that. I know in terms of tourism, it's good to show the diversity, but Africa and even the Gambia, we've gone through a worse transition where one tribe is somewhat seen as, because they're the majority, is also dominating the minority tribes. And therefore, in most of our countries, people who are progressive don't want to put a lot of importance in tribe and all the rest of it. It has never been that way all the time. We have always lived in harmony with one another. At a certain time, of course, at a certain time in our history, we have intermarried. My mother, for example, comes from a Jola tribe. My father is a Fula. I have an auntie who is a Wolof, who brought me up for some years. So we have lived very well. But what has happened over the years is this been actually used by politicians in their own to actually in their own favor, rather than uniting the people. It's like in any other country, some politicians would like to use these ethnic differences for their own interests. Yeah. And because of that, some progressive elements nowadays do not want the issue of tribe to be overemphasized because of that experience. But you are true. There is a lot of coexistence when it goes right between the various tribes in Africa, and that explains the diversity, even in terms of religion. I mean, many people will not believe that Gambia is 99% Muslim when they come here. The way we were brought up, we have lived in harmony with Christians. In fact, my wife is a Christian. I am a Muslim. So we have lived over the years within these harmonious relationships. But here and there, we have to also know that there are instances where within our society, just as it happens in other countries, politicians and other people try to use this for their own purposes.
Yeah, I mean, we see the same thing in Europe, of course, where ethnic differences are used.
Yeah, exactly.
Adama, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to say thank you for your time, and we will talk to you again soon.